Let's go over to add information about storage. The storage is going to be the amount of volumes that we're going to be mounting on top of our system. So the system is actually going to be having two parts to it. We have the core system, which allows us to have all of the CPU usage, all of the running of analysis, and all of those computations, calculations, all of those are run by the system. However, if you think about, say, you're going to be adding 10 and 10 together, where do you get those two values, 10 and 10? You're going to be getting them from a specific memory. The root volumes and all of these different SSDs are going to be providing those numbers. So the 10 and the 10 are going to be processed by the CPU. So the CPU says, I'm going to add these two numbers together, which I get from this specific memory location. Once I get that specific result, I'm going to store that back into that specific storage location, and it's going to be storing and accessing using these SSDs that we have. We have the root volume here, and the root volume is going to be having this following path. You can access this path, and when you look at SSHing into your system, you can access your specific device by looking at this path here. We have information about the snapshot. So snapshot is going to be the restoration aspect. So if you, for example, are going to be deleting your system, maybe you want to restore specific aspects of that, you can store it onto a snapshot and then restore your system. You can control information about the size that is going to be there for your specific volume. So if you have, say, a large volume where you're going to be having, say, 50 GB on your root volume, something like that, you can attach those sizes here. Keep in mind, you are going to be restricted to 30 GB of EBS volumes. So if I add another volume, I need to make sure that both of these add up to be less than 30 GBs. If I add another one, all of these need to be below 30 GBs in total. And this is how you basically add on different volumes. So these volumes are going to be self-contained, and they're going to be able to share information with different volumes. So you might want to add volumes like this. Let's delete these. Let's look at the type of volumes we have available to us. These are the three basic types, and they're going to be ranked by the IOPS that are available to us. So how many inputs and outputs per second do we have available to us? So if you think about it, say we have a computation that we're running where we're going to be adding, say, 100 numbers. In that case, we're going to be able to do all of that in just 1 second, where we're able to get the input of 100 numbers, process the specific, say, computation that we're doing, and then place it back. So if we have 1,000 numbers, then that number is going to increase. So basically, the amount of IOPS we have is going to be deciding the performance of our CPU in terms of running these different analytics and calculations. If we go over to something like provisioned IOPS, this is going to allow us to provision IOPS based on our own requirements. And whenever you see provisioned, the provisioned aspect always is going to be allowing you to control exactly how many IOPS you want. If I go back to SSD, you can see the IOPS are going to be specified as 100. If I select something like 10 GBs, come out here, you can see it is still going to be 100 here. So that is information about how you can add the different volume types. If I go over to magnetic storage, this is the cheapest storage, and this is not going to be having information about IOPS. You're going to be having a different kind of indicator for magnetic storage. So these are the three kinds that we have available to us. And if you think about which one is most expensive, these two are most expensive. Obviously, it depends on how many IOPS we're provisioning. So this may end up being less expensive. But obviously, if we go and exceed over, say, the 3000 limit, then obviously we're going to be paying more for the provisioned IOPS versus general purpose. The magnetic storage is going to be the cheapest for us. However, in this case, since we're able to choose from magnetic or EBS, we're going to go with the EBS SSD storage. In case you're wondering, the SSD stands for solid state disk. Let's go over to tag instances. The tag instances are going to be the information that you can specify about the system. So for example, you can specify a name for this system. Say the system is going to be called sys underscore 01. That is going to be the name of the system. You can specify something about, say, the manager. So who is the manager here? and we can specify something like John Stewart. John Stewart is the manager of this system. What kind of a system do we have here? So we can define system type. And the type of system that we have is, say, a quality assurance system. So this is a QA system that we have. And if you're not familiar with a quality versus a dev system, if you think about, say, a sandbox where you're able to do all sorts of practice, all sorts of different experiments that you want to run, all of that is done in the dev system where you're going to be developing the application. And once the application is ready to be presented to the customer, it's going to be shifted over to the quality assurance system. And that is going to be the time when you make that service available to your customer. So you can add more tags like this. And basically, when you get a report of the information about this instance, it's going to say name, sys_1, manager, who's the manager, John Stewart, type, this is a QA system. You can also search up this information, and when you say type, it's going to return QA. Let's go over to the last aspect that we have to configure here. And this is going to be the security group configuration. The security group here, as you can see, is going to be controlling the traffic for our instance. So it's going to be telling us and allowing us to restrict what sources can we expect traffic from. So for example, if we want to make this available in a website format, for example, we want anybody to be able to access the system, we need to add what is called HTTPS access. If you come here, you can see in many of these websites, you have this HTTPS here, and that allows us to access that specific website. We need to be allowing this HTTPS or the HTTP access to our system if we want to create a web application. So here you can click on add rule. If you know the specific port range, you can specify it here. If you want to look at the drop down menu, you can come here and say specify HTTP or go with HTTPS. There's another popular kind which you're going to be using with maybe Windows servers, and that is going to be looking at the remote desktops. So here you can use the remote desktop using the RDP here. So if you have already created one of these, and oftentimes what you do is you just create one and then just apply it to different kinds of instances that you're launching, you're going to be selecting an existing security group. But since this is our first one, we're just going to be going with this one here. Also, let's just make sure that we specify a specific security group information here. So we'll say something like security GRP 01. Let's go over to review and launch. Let's make sure that we specify information about my IP. And here we're presented on this website. So here it's just going to be all of the information about reviewing. So if you have ever ordered from Amazon before, you have probably seen this screen, and you have the different kinds of products that you're purchasing. You have different aspects about those products. So you have instance types, security groups, so on and so on. And if you remember, these are all the screens that we have seen so far. We can edit these from this page right here. And since we know all of this is going to be exactly the way we want it, we can go over to launch. So here we have information about key pairs. So the key pair, as I said before, is how we access this specific system. If you have an existing key pair, you can actually apply the same key pair for different instances. So say for example, you create one key pair and then just make that available to the different instances that you have. Here you can choose a specific key pair. You can see there are no key pairs here. So we're just going to be going over and creating a new key pair. You can click on the specific key pair name, or if you want to just proceed without a key pair, you can come here as well. Let's make sure that we're going to be creating a new key pair. Let's call this key pair the access underscore key. Let's click on download key pair. You can see that the download has been initiated, and we have all the information about accessing our specific system inside this PEM file. With that, we can click on launch instances. You can see all of the different aspects are being launched, and here we have information about that we're launching our system, and we have the estimated charges, so on and so on. We're going to be seeing how we can create billing alerts in a couple of lectures. So the billing alerts are going to make sure that you're not reaching specific limits that you have set for yourself. If you go over to view instances, let's take a look at the instances that we have. So you can see our system is going to be shown here, and you have your name, instance ID, so on and so on. However, currently it's still going to be initializing a couple of checks, and you can see the instance state is running. Now, if you think about if you had to buy your own instance and launch it here, it would have taken so long. However, this is really fast way of launching instances. It's already running, and in a couple of minutes, it's going to be done initializing as well. So with that, thank you so much for joining me on this lecture. And here we saw how we can launch our own instance. I would like you to play around with the different settings available to us here. And let's move along to the next lecture.